Dr. Dollar, who do we have on today?
So we have Dom Thompson, who you met at JLC Live, right? Became a recent adaptive customer. And we are going to have a conversation about just general attitude towards technology in construction. And I think that Dom speaks with a level of clarity around this topic, and I would say empathy as well for his employees. That was honestly like just everything he said was very well put. And I thought it was an interesting, kind of honest, open discussion about how to think about tech, how to get it implemented in your business. And then in addition to that, he's got a really interesting background in terms of how he got into building. So I thought it was a great episode. Let's get into it.
We are joined today with our good friend Dominick Thompson over from Watershed. Dominick, give the listeners a little background on yourself, your business, just a quick minute snap there.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate you asking, Reece. We have had a lot of a great banter, and I think we get along well. And glad we could connect, and good to hang out with you guys. But no, we're a general contractor here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's my hometown. And we mostly work in South Charlotte, so we're kind of on the state border. We work on the South Carolina towns, just on the border there as well, and then the Lake Norman area, just north of town as well. So our company basically subcontracts everything. We're kind of a project management machine. So we sub and manage everything, and we have three project managers in the field. And personally, I mean, I've been in this business for about 13 years. I've got an interesting kind of background in the business, in that I didn't get into the business till I was 30 years old. I didn't grow up in the trades or anything like that, but I joined the military as an Air Force reservist. I didn't know that the Air Force offered a career field in construction until I walked into the door of the recruiter's office one day and needed a way to pay for college at like 29 years old, and wanted to put myself back through school. And they said, yeah, we actually have a construction career field. I'm like, what are you talking about? You guys build what? And they're like, nah, like legit, we build stuff all over the world. I was like, that sounds amazing. So, and we'll pay for your college. So I did that. And that's my time in the military as a reservist was unique, because like as a reservist, you're serving 1 weekend every month and 2 weeks every year. And then in my career field in the Air Force as a builder, we deployed every 3.5 or 4 years. So that's where you would be gone for like 7 months at a time. You might go build anywhere all over the world for 6 or 7 months. So I did 2 tours in the Middle East, 1 winter and 1 summer. And on my 2 week per year and my 1 week in a month, serving, trips throughout the year, we'd be training and doing some hands-on projects and things like that. So that's where I learned to build. But when I was wearing my civilian hat, because, I had something else to do during the normal week, I was working for a high-end construction company here in town. And that's where I really learned how to run a business. I didn't know that's what I was learning to do when I was learning to do it, but it started as kind of like inside sales, a little bit of estimating. And then I started going on sales calls and working with homeowners and getting to know our trades and financial management. And then they asked me to start a different division of the company. And that's where I started learning how to read a P&L and how to run a small business. And so I had a really good foundation from that standpoint, sort of inside the business. And I also had my boots on the ground in the ditch, so to speak. Knowing how to build, working in the military. So really unique. Yeah, unique. Because it seems like most people either come from one or the other,
Totally.
Yeah.
I had my foot in each pool. So it was great.
Totally. Well, and I think that's so, like, your experience, like in your background, hearing that, Dom, is awesome. And it makes so much sense. Even just getting to know you over the last almost year at this point. And that's one of the big reasons why, we wanted you to come on the podcast, because of your understanding of business, because of your perspectives on the business. And with this being builders, budgets, and beers, focusing on project financials and construction accounting, I was really curious to have you dig into kind of your perspective of managing a P&L. How do you view a P&L from a business perspective, from an operations perspective, where you allocate your time, where you allocate your resources, and share the nuggets of wealth that you have for our listeners.
I don't know that I have a lot of wealth of knowledge. I'll tell you, like, I'm a real like ready, fire, aim kind of person. I don't really do a lot of like study, then shoot your shot kind of thing. Most of us, if we're in business, kind of, that's not really how we're wired. But I'll tell you, like, to be honest, I probably don't do as much financial analysis in my company as I should. Like, to be real, my version of financial analysis is it's like two big things, right? I look at QuickBooks and I look at my list of projects and I look and see like down the whole list of projects, how's my profit margin on these projects? And if it's dipped below like 20, 25%, I want to know why. We either haven't billed the client or something's wrong, right? And just having that quick check on the project a couple times a week maybe gives me a reason to go dig into something. But I have friends who are builders and they're studying the whip like every day. They're like in the whip, like, oh gosh, I'm overbilled and underbilled. And I'm like, dude, I pay someone to do my whip. Like, I don't even want to do it. Like it blows my mind. I don't want to fool with it. So, but I do spend time looking at my job profitability and I have to, because of Adaptive, I have the ability to approve all the bills that go out the door, right? So I know what's going out the door. That no one can pay a bill. We don't write checks at Watershed Builders, so I'm never signing checks, mailing anything. I have a part-time office manager, and to give some perspective about the size company we are, if that's useful to another listener. So like we last year did 4.1 million in revenue. Year 4, calendar year 4. Year 5, we had a weird year. First 5 months of this year were not awesome. So we're a little behind that. But outside of just having a slower sort of economic year, like in other words, we didn't do like not profitable jobs. That wasn't part of the problem. It was just more demand and top line was just not where it needed to be. So at any rate, we're going to probably do 3.5, 3.6, something like that this year. We have 3 full-time field employees, myself working mostly in sales, and an estimator full-time. And my office manager manages all that 15 hours a week, pretty minimal, 15 to maybe 20 hours a week, handling, AP, AR, bill approvals, paying all the bills, all that things, credit card receipts. That's another thing is we don't have charge accounts with any vendors, right? So like my lumberyard doesn't, we don't just put it on our account, like, and then we get some big whopping $100,000 statement at the end of the month. We don't do that. We put everything on credit cards. And that's mostly because I always wanted to know, like, how much money do I owe someone at any given time? And if I have charge accounts, then like, if I don't know, if my statement hasn't come that month, there has to be some way to figure out, okay, like my bank account has X amount in it minus who do I owe money to out there? Yeah. Right. And I don't want to stress about that. I want to know that when I look at my bank account, it's real, right? Because I've paid the credit card off, which we do a couple times a month, and it's real time. So with all that said, we run everything through Adaptive, and it allows us to stay lean. And I've had a lean mindset in running the business for a long time. Like we do everything. We personally use JobTread. We're in QuickBooks Online. We're using Adaptive. Am I allowed to say who we used to use for bill pay? Am I allowed to bring those names up?
Up to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So
you share
most people wouldn't use them or may not even know, but SAP Concur, right? Like that's
right. Used. I remember talking to you about that.
Yeah. So we used Concur, which is like a big business platform, right? Like Bank of America probably uses SAP, right? All this stuff. Like so, it's not awesome for small business, but it gets the job done. The problem is they will do your expense management, but they don't do bill pay. So we were using Concur for expense management through our city card, which it would be 5 of us using the city card, right? And again, we don't have charge accounts. So we have 5 people out there buying things all week long, and there's lots of expenses coming in, lots of receipts, transactions. I wanted the ability to approve or have a look at those receipts before we just let them slip onto the books and money just flying out the door, right? The other service we were using is bill.com, but they do bill pay, but they don't do expense management, or didn't at the time. So when I met you, it was the biggest draw to me at that time was that I could do both in one platform. I could do bill pay and expense management. And I'll be honest, the lack of ability for Adaptive to mail a check was a little bit of a hold up at first. I was like, oh man, I got some. Yeah, it's like, man, I got some old school subs who, they want to get a check, and at least with bill.com, they could get their check and be happy. They go to it's mailbox money and they're happy. But what I found is like they just adapt. They just you make them pick. It's like, okay, hey man, like I've got $15,000 here for you. Like you can have it. It's yours. But all I need you to do is just go fill out this ACH. Just follow the link in the email. It's not spam. Fill it out.
Yep.
Put your bank account information, and the money will just appear in your bank account. So a couple of people were a little hesitant or had their own reasons, personal reasons for things they were trying to do. I'm not getting into that. But anyway, they've adapted and overcame. So everybody's on board. I mean, like they're all doing it. We're paying it all through adaptive and expense management and all that stuff. So it's been great.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. And to take this back, though, I mean, you made a comment at the beginning in terms of like your financial analysis process, right? Is like very simple. Go to QuickBooks. You're looking at all your jobs, and then you're looking at profit margin.
I'm not saying that's the way everyone should do it. I'm just being honest that I do it that way.
No,
I kind of like that. I thought that was a nice, simple way to. Simple is elegant. You do something to start. Like that's great. I think the hard part is making sure, like that analysis requires all your costs to have been tracked.
Yes.
And like the draws to have been tracked as well, right?
That's right.
But once you do that, that's a great way to stay on top of things. Just a nice, simple report.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where I wanted to go. Is you said like really like your red flags that get thrown is when like you see like money's not there. It's probably like we're not billing, right? Mm-hmm. Or there's another problem. I mean, what gets in your way of just staying on top of that altogether, like billing regularly? Or when you do uncover other problems, you get that indicator. What do those typically?
I'll tell you what kind of problems we would have. That to be honest, in some part to adaptive, and of course, this is not just like one big, huge plug for adaptive. It is, but it's not. I don't have these problems, right? And there's other reasons outside of adaptive for that we could talk about or not talk about as far as like our billing schedule. And right now we're talking mostly about on the expense side, but on the revenue side, we sell a job. It's our company runs everything on fixed cost, right? So we're not a cost plus builder. And I know, so some of this conversation is a bit irrelevant for those who are cost plus builders, but what fits me the best and our company the best is to do everything at a fixed cost. That includes my margin, which means we have to really, really dial in our estimates and make sure that our estimates are right. Because if we miss something, we're not going back to the customer and saying like, oh, well, we were short on this and that. And it's like, no, it's your problem. So we do take that risk. But it allows our revenue to be predictable, right? So I know that as long as we've done a good job with the estimate and it's thorough, and I've signed off on it before we ever presented it to the customer, then I can sleep well knowing like, hey, like we're going to hit our margins or maybe get slow. We'll have a little bit of slippage, 1%, something like that, but nothing crazy. But with every job, we have a billing schedule that is tied to certain benchmarks on the job, right? So when demolition is done, there's a bill. When foundation work is done, there's a bill. Framing, trade roughs, on and on. And that's laid out on a spreadsheet. We PDF it, attached to the contract. And the homeowner knows that these bills are coming at these benchmarks. So that helps me know what our cash outlay is going to look like. And there is profit margin built into every one of those jobs or invoices rather. So every invoice they're getting includes our profit margin. We're not just like holding all the profit margin to the end of the job. And so we know that our cash flow is going to be positive as long as the job's progressing like it should. And then on the expense management side, I'm able to approve everything. I'm able to see everything because all of our receipts go through adaptive, and the workflow that we created comes to me to be able to see the receipt and make sure we're not wasting money or buying things the guys shouldn't be buying in the field or things like that. And then on the bill pay side, the approval flow we set up is that I have to approve the bill before my office manager can hit the pay button. So, and I have someone else not related to this process who reconciles our bank accounts. So there's no bias there about, or is money flying out the door? It's very easy for me to tell if money's flying out the door without my approval. So it's safeguarded that quite a bit. Those two things, both having a system on the revenue side and on the expense management side, has really made it so that I could focus on growing the business and creating systems and not have to worry about money and paperwork and writing checks and all that kind of stuff.
Totally. I love it. Dr. Geller, do you want to chime in? I have another question.
No, No, if you have a question, go for it. The one thing I'd say, we will, you can, it sounds like it's great that your subs are able to get onto the no checks. Like that's preferable, but we will have the ability to mail checks pretty soon.
Okay. I'm not volunteering that. It's good to know, but we're not going. We're not
going. If you want to go back, and if you want to go backwards, we can help you.
We're not going backwards. No. We're not going to reteach the dog the old trick.
Yeah. That's product at its finest and adaptive. Matt heard you want checks, slacked Sarah. Checks are coming.
That's great. I love it. My buddy Joe in Alabama, who's a builder, who I think you guys started working with recently. He does have a few. And I will say, like, us being in a little bit more metropolitan market helps, right? Like everybody's doing a lot more digital things. We're a little bit faster paced town. We're obviously not like New York or Miami or even Atlanta for that matter, but we are a financial services town, and so I think money just moves relatively quickly in this town, and people tend to kind of keep up, But like my buddy Joe in Birmingham, he's like, man, these guys aren't going to enter their bank account information. I get it, but so they need that because in their market, that's a legit concern. So I totally get it. Yeah.
Totally. Well, and that's where I wanted to go was your comment about like certain markets having, in this situation, more like subcontractors and vendors for that matter, be more resistant to adopting technology. I mean, we can talk about that a little bit more, but even if you have more perspective, Dom, from like a general contractor side, right? Yeah. Of like you're in Builder 20 groups, you're certainly involved. Like you've got people in Michigan, you've got people in Alabama, you've got people all over the country. I mean, what do you really think the biggest hang up is to builders adopting technology and new ways of practice is attributed to?
I think it's in their own head. I think saying like, oh, it's my market. Well, like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, but like you kind of get what you allow because like if you have a good partnership with your trade partners, like a really good relationship, and you're like, hey Bill, like I'm really trying to, here's my goals. Let's have coffee. Let's go have breakfast and sit down and talk about shop, right? What are your challenges? I'm pretending like, say I'm talking to my plumber and I'm like, yeah, what's going on in your business? Like, how can we do better? You know what I mean? Like having conversations to foster community with your trade partners, assuming that you care about that kind of thing. It builds a relationship so that when you want to change and sort of lead some sort of endeavor, like, we don't write checks anymore. There's equity in the relationship, right? It's not just like, hey, this is the way we do it, like get on board or leave kind of thing or whatever. So I think a lot of times it's just in the head of the owner to be willing to adapt and to know how to get people on board with it and to help people understand where you're going so that they know, hey, I'm getting on this train with you to this place that is a better place and makes my life easier, brings value to me. So I think that's part of it. But, that's a broad brush to paint with, right? So like, I think there definitely are some people in some markets where, you've got a father-son, type mom and pop. They're never going to grow. Their grandma still does the, paper in the file cabinet. I mean, those people are very much, they're all over the place, and we have them in our town too. But I just feel like mostly it has to do with having good equity with your trade partners and, just having a lot of trust in that relationship and building a relationship so they get on board with you. Just like you would your employees, right? Like, it's the same thing.
I like the way that you said that, where it's not hey, I'm the GC and like you're just gonna get on board and this is how I do things. I think when it's a win-win, that's the way to make it work, right? Like, yeah, I think that electronic payments is like, if you just explain it, it is a win-win, right? You both save time. No one needs to come by your office anymore to like pick up the check or open it in the mail and go through the remote deposit. So it's a win-win. We have seen others where it's not necessarily a win-win, right? Where like you try to get the subs to use your portal, maybe like the portal of some sort of software you use.
Sure.
And then for the sub, it's like they're working with different GCs. They got different portals.
Yeah, that's a pain.
They got their own accounting software. Like that doesn't really work. That's more of just like a one-sided value thing. So
yep. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't. And you just have to kind of sell it a little bit. Like, hey man, I want you to get your money faster. We're going to approve our bills every week. We want you to get paid more quickly and not have to even walk out to the mailbox to get it.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
it's just a mindset change. Or are you willing to like grow and adapt, your mindset about how you do things? And, I'm on your side. So let's do it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, with that, like when you're, again, so the hesitancy to this, you kind of got to sell it a little bit. You certainly like, it's not that you're like positioning it as a win-win. It just is. What is the resistance that you're hearing, Dom, to these win-win type situations?
I think it's mostly the owner of the company doesn't. It's them. It's not the sub. It's them.
Right.
Any change is hard. Like obviously, like
Mhm.
for me going to the gym consistently is like it's not happening.
Right.
It's tough. So like learning a new platform, right? Especially in this world of software, like when you onboard something and it takes so much energy, effort, and time, and it's not just you who it affects your whole company, right? Like
Mhm.
everyone who touches that software is going to have to learn new skills and habits, and
Yep.
you're going to now hold yourself accountable for doing it and hold them accountable for doing it and all this stuff. And so it's hard. That part I think is the hardest part, getting out of your own way, and being willing to embrace the change yourself and hold yourself accountable because it allows you to like free up your week,
Totally.
like I can't imagine I can't imagine pushing paper around and taking we used to, this is still probably more advanced than what some people are doing, but when I first started the company, we used to take a picture of the receipt and put it in a dedicated Google Drive folder. And then my office, but like instead of cost coding it, like we would call the photograph like the dollar amount, the date, the cost code, and the job name. Like that would be the file name on the photo. And then Kathy, my then office manager, would like literally log into QuickBooks and just go drag those images over to QuickBooks. But there was no approval flow. And it was just sort of like whenever Kathy could get around to it, and there was no approval flow. But even that I understand is still like a 2.0 level of what some people are probably still doing, is like the receipts are floating around the truck. They fell out the door when the guy opened up the van and rolled over it on the job sites all muddy. And they go back to the office and turn in their Ziploc bag of receipts to the office, to Brenda at the office every Thursday or whatever. The challenge with that is should be obvious, is like your job costs are never real time. You never really know. Like the last company I worked at was crazy. I left there in 2019 and they were pretty tip of the spear kind of company, and still are, like very strong reputation in our market. They were doing like 40 million a year, 50 million a year when I left. They're probably still around the 50 or maybe, if I had to guess, that $1 million mark. They're huge. But even then, like we would literally get a folder put on each of our desks, and they had all been like rubber stamped, where the PM would write on the rubber stamp like what cost code it goes to and initial it, like, and then put it back in the folder, and all the folders would go back on the desk up in the front office, like every week. Dude. So then people had to process those things, and your job costs, like if I wanted to final bill a customer, like final bill, and we've got like 10 allowances on the job for cabinets and countertops and all these things, and you needed to send a final bill to the customer because we're punched out, final inspections are done and all this stuff, you would literally have to wait like a month and just like hope that all your job costs had hit the books and that everything was up to date, because you didn't want to send that customer a final invoice, right? And then something hits your job costs like after you sent the invoice. And then you're eating crow. You're like, oh, Miss Smith, this is really embarrassing, but I didn't see it, but the drywaller sent me like a $5,000 bill after I sent you the, or whatever, right? Fill in the blank. That's so unprofessional, and just a weight on your mind that just shouldn't be there. But like we have as close to real time, like bookkeeping as I think is possible. Like the only other thing that could happen is like you swipe the card at Lowe's and they send it to your books. That's the only faster other thing that can happen.
Right.
But yeah, like if I wanted to approve receipts every day, we could have like day-to-day real-time updates.
Yeah.
So it helps us keep our financials like live,
For sure. Well, and Matt, do you want to go?
No, I was just, I guess you were talking about that point earlier around the reports, right? Which I thought was like a great, simple report for just checking like profitability across projects. the point you just touched on, that anecdote of hey, I have the final bill for the customer, but I'm going to wait a month just to make sure I get all my costs in. That is when I guess you start to get into more of the like cash flow management, because, 30K today is way better than 30K in a month because you earn interest on your cash, right?
Yeah.
So like, you want to get that payment as soon as possible. So if you're waiting to get paid because you're waiting to track your costs, like that ends up having a downward effect on cash flow management as well.
Yeah, and you're being the bank for the customer. Like
Yes.
not just the opportunity cost to have maybe made some money on the money sitting in the account. If you do that, but then like you're down that 30K that you spent a month behind.
Yes.
Buying this, that, or the other, and you're sitting around hoping that nothing else is going to hit you before you ask the customer for money. Yeah, golly, man, I can't imagine living like that. Yeah. So we're always ahead. Cool. Thank God.
There we go.
And that's, I think, like this, like all like fantastic points. And just like you mentioned at the beginning of that is like how many builders are doing it. Dom, I don't have the actual numbers on it. I'm just going off of talking to a lot of builders over the last, call it 10 years. I would say 60% of builders in the United States operate with the rubber stamp. And to your point with the builder you used to work for, the $40-50 million a year business, those antiquated processes still exist. Yeah. And that's where it goes into a lot of builders that we're talking to. And this is where I want to take this is a lot of builders that we're talking to, they're seeing that the expensive part of business, software, whatever it is, isn't the cost of the software. It's the cost of the overhead that it takes to maintain that software.
Oh yeah.
It's the cost. It's the cost of the process.
Yeah.
That is chewing them alive, and they just write it off as like, this is just the way that it's done. And this all segues back into your comment of builders being resistant or getting in their own way over it. Often is because they aren't massively confident that there is a better way, or they don't truly understand what's happening in the process. They never sat it down. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, 100%. Maybe they're a little bit afraid of like how things are going to interact, and they don't want to mess it up. And so for fear of making a mistake, maybe they don't try. Or, I mean, there's that, but then, most of us are in some capacity, proprietors, right? Like we're owner operators, like we're almost all of us are involved in this business somehow, some way on a day-to-day basis. And I think a lot of us are working towards a day that, we work ourselves out of that. But in the meantime, many of us are like working in the business and, just slammed, man. I mean, which is great. But you're already pulling like 40, 50, 40, that's laughable. Why did I say that? You're already pulling like 50, 60 plus hour weeks. And then it's like, oh, I've got to take the brain energy. And then like, I've got a 4-year-old and a baby girl on the way in March. So like, I'm like, thank you. It's like, you're going to take the time, block out the time to like learn some new trick, that you might fail at and might cause problems and piss off your subs and all this. It just feels like, I will admit, it just feels a little bit like, can we just talk about it tomorrow? Right. But like tomorrow doesn't come. But yeah, you're right about the process, the cost of the process, and the people involved to make their processes continue to move.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I think you're seeing a lot more of this. Like Matt was where was the Intuit conference, Matt? That was Vegas.
Yeah,
you were just in Vegas, and you just did a post about it on LinkedIn and how so much private equity is going into construction right now. Right.
Yeah.
And
I believe
like when you think about like when you look at like what is private equity, it's people coming in with private money and they're buying businesses in whole, portions of, whatever it might be. And their entire goal is to operationalize it, right? Make it much more efficient and make it a healthier asset. Right.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, is like there's a lot more builders aside from the private equity side. A lot more builders are starting to adopt that mentality, and they're starting to see it because of the accessibility of much more quality tech, right?
Yeah.
They're able to sit down and they're able to start to contextualize, okay, like we might have 50 grand, 60 grand, 100 grand, depending on the size of the business, sitting at a desk and overhead doing very manual processes that are absolutely crucial, not arguing that, absolutely crucial to the function and flow of the business. But now they have the option to take a step back and say, do we need somebody that we're paying $80 an hour, billing the customer $100 an hour to PM a house?
Sure.
To sit at a desk with a rubber stamp and categorize a bill. Do we need to do that? Or can we open up that time, push them back into the field and actually manage the execution and the financials of that project to deliver the quality product that we're selling to these people?
Yeah, totally. It's the difference between like a whatever. It's the reason that like my grandpa's diesel truck got like 8 miles a gallon and mine gets like 16 or 17. You know, it's like the efficiency is just, you know, these are like the little things that you fine tune to push more with less, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've always had a lean mentality. Like I'm just sort of wired that way because we all took the risk to start companies, and mine's only 5.5 years old, and thank God it's doing well. But we've always had like this really lean kind of low overhead mentality, and I'm sort of wired that way anyhow. And so we never really started with like, yeah, let's hire on more and more people, right? Like, because what we need to process that paper or whatever. So I'm grateful for that because I'm not having to move backwards. To your point about checks, like we're not going back to go correct things because we got started on a really good foot, I think. But I would imagine if I were, like if you want to reduce your overhead, there's a human element in that I think you have to wrestle with about your people, right? And a lot of us in Small Business USA have relationships, like deep personal relationships with the people who help us do this, right? So that does make it hard. I'm not gonna lie. Like that might be the other part about going with something like adaptive is like, how's this going to impact the people? Like to your point, like, do I need them in the office doing this or that? Because it could affect their life. That's maybe a little dramatic, and maybe it's not quite that dramatic. But
and what I will say, Don, is like I think and we hear that all the time, like the hesitation, right, or like the threat, right? But I relate it back to there was a lot of blacksmiths making a hell of a lot of money pushing out horseshoes in 1919 or whenever Henry Ford came along, right? 1920s, we'll call it, right? But then it was like, there's no way that people are going to be buying automobiles at volume because they have horses that are reliable and blah, blah, blah. And it's not like those like blacksmiths just disappeared. What they do, they had very foundational skills in the most early version of mechanics, right? Yeah. They go up to Detroit and they one of those factories and they accommodate. And where I go with that example is that's what we're saying. That's the opportunity of maybe the fear and the intimidation or the threat of like, dude, this is my job. Like I have a relationship with this person. This is what they do. Sure. That's the reaction to fear when we could be proactive of it and say, we can see the writing on the wall. We can see what technology is doing to society and the economy. And this is where we can start investing in our people that we care that much about to level up in skill set, right?
Yeah,
we've seen where we have individuals that were just 15, 20 years just chalking away at QuickBooks doing their thing. And the owner will turn around and be like, there's a community college down the road. Go take some classes in higher level accounting. Yeah. And now you're that much more valuable of an asset, providing that much more valuable of a skill instead of just entering information into a piece of software.
Yeah.
Right? There's a very positive spin on this. It really is. And we see it. We see it with our customers.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, being in business is hard, right? Like dealing with change and people management and all that. That's part of this. You don't get all the perks and then not take any of the tough parts. So yeah, that's the tough part. And you just suck it up and you figure it out. But you're right. I was thinking like, okay, well, if you didn't need the person 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, because you've got some efficiency in place, right? Like, well, what could they do that extra 1 day a week for you that adds value, right? Mm-hmm. Could they be helping you with marketing, writing content? Maybe they're a good writer, writing content. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's lots of things, or maybe that person has been waiting to tell you that that they really would like to take 1 day off a week because they just had a kid, but they don't want to let you down. And you know what I mean? Like, just assume nothing. I think it goes back to like what I was saying with your trade partners and like assume nothing. I think it's have a conversation. Hey, this is where we're going. We love having you here and we want to continue that. What else how can we grow together in this? Right. Like, and make this better for everybody.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I also think as like an employer, when you have people on your team, like, you're right. Like there's an element of like an emotional connection and like concern of what does this mean for that person? Say like, oh, I found this technology that can do a lot of what they do currently. I almost think though that like ignoring that might be worse for the employee, right? Because
sure.
Part of what you want is to develop your employees so they can like go get another job, elsewhere. They're like competitive in the market, right? And they're developing their own skill set. if in like an extreme example, say you're like the one person in the world that doesn't adopt the technology and the entire rest of the market does, this employee has now become entirely dependent on you just being like a generous person.
Right.
And they haven't been like encouraged to go learn this new skill that will allow them to thrive in any environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. It was funny. We were I hadn't given much thought to it when we had, when we were doing our onboarding call with Adaptive, and we were on the call, and I think it was Daniel. He's like, okay, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to click this and do that, and then blah, blah, blah. And it became like real painfully obvious in that moment with my office manager on the call. She's like, oh, wait a minute. So like, I don't have to do that anymore. And I don't remember what the thing was, but there was something that now it was like, we all had the same realization that like, oh yeah, like I don't need you to do that anymore. Like you just cut like 5 hours a week out of your workload. It's like, and she was part-time. She was maybe like 22 hours a week for me, sometimes 25. So anyway, but you know what? She went and picked up another client doing other things, and it's made her better because now she's bringing this value to other people as well. And she's taking on another client. She's not skipping a beat, and she's better off for it. She's better off for it because she learned a new skill, learned a new trick, and she's adopting that on her own too. And so, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Cool.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love it. And that's where I think, and we can wrap this up, guys. I know we've got to jump, but I think this has been an awesome episode, Don. Really appreciate you coming on, because I think just the clarity and your succinct articulation of the topic was incredible. And so many builders, they struggle with this, and it's not a like take the jump, it's a take the exploration, right? Like start looking at, enjoy the process, look at what's available, and it doesn't always have to be, change doesn't have to be as negative as it has had to be in the past.
No,
right?
man.
There's a lot of solution out there.
Especially when you're looking in the rear view and you're like, man,
totally.
we just saved what? And what's nice about the charges for Adaptive is that it costs the same no matter what. That's one of the great, well, it's predictable, right? It's like,
right.
I know what it's going to cost me next month and the next month versus like other services I've used in the past where like the fee was based on all sorts of factors where like, I don't know if I'm going to be paying this much next month for their service or this much a month for the next service. And where are we going to be at? And it's like a cost average divided by 12, kind of thing. And so it's nice that it's predictable in that way. And never looking back. I tell all my 20 club buddies about it. And I think it's for our business. I think there's no question. It's like, I don't know why. I wish I would have met you the year prior at JLC Live. So it's been great. We appreciate the support.
We were just a twinkle in the SaaS eye.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Would love to see you guys at JobTread Connect, but I looked at the vendor list. I don't think I saw you guys on JobTread Connect, but I know that they're the people who go there. I'll tell you, the JobTread crowd, it's not as big of an ocean as like the builder trend crowd or whatever. But man, I'll tell you what's cool is the people who are involved in JobTread are usually like neck deep in it. They're like diehard. Yep. They're like, they love it. And in large part of the reason is because of their CEO, Eric Fortenberry. I don't know if you know Eric, if you had a chance to meet him. But Eric's a really cool cat, and he got burned, by PE like a while back. So he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder about like kind of sticking it to the man and like doing it his way. Yeah, it's great. So with that, he's made the software like really API friendly, and there's so many things you can do with it. And so I just felt like, man, you guys should be at the table there, because you'd have a good captive audience there for a few days in Dallas in January. So they're not paying me to say that. I don't have a share link or anything like that, but I believe in it. I believe in it. It's organic.
Yeah. We want to
organic enthusiasm.
We want to build the integrations. That's for sure. So
that's great.
Tell Eric, give us a call.
What's cool is I actually could tell him that, because he's not inaccessible, and he probably would reach out to you.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Love it. We're open. I mean, that's very much like how we operate as well. I mean, us focusing on product financials exclusively and really reducing the friction and the flow of what has to happen for this entire conversation, right? Of understanding cash flow. We're aware. I mean, we've got builders on BuilderTrend, JobTread, Co-Construct, Procore, Build Tools, Resio, right? Literally all of them. And it's like, we're all solving problems.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the control and the real time, the three things that I love about it, and you're not offering me anything to say this, the control that I have because of the visibility, right? I can
Mhm.
see everything real time from the app on my phone. I'll be at the beach for Thanksgiving in Florida and I'll have to approve bills that week. And it won't be drudgery because I can just open up my phone and look at the screen. I can see the Lowe's receipt. I know what the guy spent their money on. It's cost coded, all that. So the clarity and the real time, effect on my books, knowing where my money is at all times, and then just how easy it is to use. It's so simple. Like, yeah, it's just a no-brainer. So I really appreciate it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's wrap this up. Get you guys to your meetings. It was an absolute pleasure, Dom.
Yeah, man.
Excited to
Likewise.
release this one, and
Yeah.
we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds
Yeah,
great.
it
You
was
guys take
great
care.
time.
Yeah.
Talk soon.
Good to meet you guys. Yeah, take it easy.
See you.
Bye.